Today, we're going to take a look at two different polls. We've got one from Emerson in Ohio. We're going to see if Dems might be making those races competitive, but we're going to start here in Texas. This is the U.S. Senate, the Democratic primary between James Talarico and Jasmine Crockett, who just recently entered this race. This could end up being a big showdown, or it could end up fizzling. Tomorrow, I'll have a community poll up about who you think is going to be the nominee in this race. This could have implications for the general election as well. Both of them relatively young, but Talarico even younger. I think either way Democrats have an uphill climb here, but Talarico seems to be the safer choice. Crockett is more of a wild card. So let's see what this poll says. Let's look at the details. This is the Barbara Jordan Public Policy Research and Survey Center. And if we go down here, this is from Texas Southern University. And the sample size here is pretty substantial. It's 1,600 likely Democratic primary voters. And it was conducted December 9th through the 11th, so it's current. Now, the executive summary here pretty much sums it all up. In the head-to-head between Crockett and Talarico, Crockett leads 51 to 43. 6% are not sure. If that panned out, that would be a huge deal. Even though neither of them have any statewide experience, Crockett seems to be the much riskier choice in a general election, kind of like how Ken Paxton might be for the Republicans. But Paxton at least has some statewide success. Crockett, I think, has made way too many controversial statements to have success in the general, but in a primary, that could work. It could turn out to be something like Kari Lake in Arizona. Great success in the primary, but not as much in the general. Talarico doesn't seem like he would be off-putting at all in the general election, and Crockett's brand seems like it's more of a spectacle. Yet maybe Talarico is viewed as too mild, but he's still a Democrat in Texas, and unless he gets enough crossover vote in a general, and if Hispanic voters shift hard back toward the left, even he would not be able to win. So let's see what else we've got here. Crockett enjoys an overwhelming advantage over Talarico among black voters. It's 89% to 8. Of course, Crockett is black, Talarico is not. Maybe that alone explains it all, maybe there's more to it. And then how about Talarico with white voters? He leads 53 to 40. And with Hispanic voters, he's up 51 to 41. With other demographics, we've got 57% of women are going for Crockett, 36 for Talarico. With men, it's 52 for Talarico, 42 for Crockett. Crockett gets the most support with black women at 92%, black men at 84. Hispanic women is at 49, and her lowest is with white women at 45, Hispanic men 33, and white men at 32. That's the lowest. Talarico does the best with white men at 62%, Hispanic men 61, white women 46, and he does the lowest with Hispanic women 41, black men 12, and black women just 6. And if you want to know how much these primary voters want to know about these two candidates, 94%, that's really high, already know enough about Crockett to have an opinion of her. And they give her 85% favorable, 9% unfavorable. With James Talarico, who's been in this race even longer, 79% know enough about him. And 77% have a favorable opinion, 2% unfavorable. That's very low. So Crockett's unfavorables are higher, but still only 9%. And Crockett has had a lot of national exposure. I guess that translates into her having a higher name ID. Talarico seems to be under the radar, and there's a slice of the electorate that still doesn't know enough about him. And the groups that don't know enough about him are 47% of black, likely primary voters, don't know enough about Talarico. With Hispanic and white voters, that's only 15 and 14% respectively. Now, how do these respondents think these two would do in a general election? 53% believe Crockett would be the most successful in mobilizing Democratic-leaning low-propensity voters to turn out for her. With Talarico, 34% think the same. I don't really even disagree with that. I think she could fire up some blue-leaning voters, but in the general election, I think Talarico is going to have the advantage, as we see here. 58% believe that he would be the most successful in convincing regular Republican voters to cross over and vote for him. 29% think the same about Crockett. It's really tough for me to think many Republican voters at all would cross over and vote for Crockett. Talarico, I think, could easily get more. But would that offset the low propensity voters that Crockett could turn out in general? Well, it's always unclear, but I don't really think so. If anything, I would think Crockett would turn off more voters toward the middle than she would bring in that haven't voted. So down here, we've got more data. In this sample, we've got women account for 56% of it, men 43. White Texans are 45%, Hispanic or Latino 30%, black at 21. Let's glance at a little bit more of this. Again, Crockett at 51, Talarico 43, 6% unsure. Now here's some of the crosstabs. Now we didn't talk about age yet, but 18 to 34-year-olds heavily break toward Talarico. Now that's actually a surprise for me. I would think Crockett has much more national exposure and social media presence, and she'd be tapping into that younger energy. But apparently that's not the case here. 35 to 44-year-olds break for Talarico 51 to 42, and 55 and up, they're breaking for Crockett 59 to 34. And with 4-year college degrees, it's almost even. Crockett's ahead 48 to 45. No 4-year degree. She's ahead 53 to 41. And 14% of this sample were independents. They're breaking for Talarico by 8, 49 to 41. So this is a big race here. It's just starting to shape up. The primary is in March. To me, it seems easy that Talarico is the safer choice. Still unlikely to win in a general election, but if there's a big enough blue wave, then I think he could have a shot. Crockett might have success here with the base, but in the general, I think she has more to lose. But it also depends on what happens on the Republican side. It's a battle between John Cornyn, the incumbent, Ken Paxton, and Wesley Hunt. It'll be fun to see what happens in a few months, but let's move on to Ohio. We've got a poll here from Emerson. It says Democrats make gains in races for governor and U.S. Senate. So let's get down into it. For governor, in the expected matchup between Democrat Amy Acton and Republican Vivek Ramaswamy, now Acton is actually ahead by 1 point, 46 to 45, 9% undecided. Back in August, Ramaswamy was ahead by 10, 49 to 39. So a lot of movement here in a few months. Dems have got to be feeling pretty good about this. But how high can they go? Can they get above 46, 47%, or is that going to be their ceiling? And what about Ramaswamy? Is he actually running a decent campaign, or do you think he's got some work to do? Is he going to take this state for granted and think that he's automatically going to win? Maybe voters are looking for a change here in the governor's mansion. It's not likely, but it's always a possibility. Now, what about in the U.S. Senate? In the special election, Sherrod Brown, the expected Democrat, is at 46. John Husted, the appointed incumbent, is at 49. But back in August, Husted was ahead by 6, 50 to 44. So it's kind of entered pure toss-up territory. Now, Brown did just take a loss to a non-incumbent and a seemingly weaker candidate back in 24. Now he's not an incumbent anymore, and Husted seems to be a safer choice for the Republicans. But again, if there's a big enough blue wave, maybe Brown could eke out another win here. At least that's the thinking of the Dems. Now take note of this paragraph here. Ohio voters who did not participate in the 24 election, most of whom are under 30, are more likely to identify as Republicans rather than Democrats. In addition, 31% of voters under 30 align with independents or Democrats, while 38% identify with Republicans. But this group still breaks for Democrats on the ballot by 12 points. So that's something to keep your eye on. What about the favorability ratings for Ohio politicians? Vice President J.D. Vance has the best approval rating. He's at 50 to 45. It's not fantastic, but it's better than Sherrod Brown, who's at 43 favorable, 44 unfavorable. Ramaswamy also underwater by 1, 40 to 41. Senator Bernie Moreno is underwater by 2, 39 to 41. Amy Acton is at 35 favorable, 33 unfavorable. And John Husted is 30 favorable, 32 unfavorable. Big chunk are unsure about Husted at 38, with Acton it's 32, Moreno 20, Ramaswamy 19, Brown is 13, and Vance is 5. Then we've got Donald Trump. His approval rating is at 46%, 48 disapprove. That's a bit of a noticeable decline from August. But what about Governor Mike DeWine, who's term limited? His approval rating is just 26%, 45% disapprove. So that's another opportunity for Dems there. The current leadership is way underwater, so they're going to make a case that it's time for some change. And back in the blue wave of 2018, when DeWine won his first term, that was a very competitive race. It looked like that could have been won by the Dems, but DeWine ended up pulling it out. The top issue for Ohio voters is the economy at 44%. Threats to democracy is at 13. Healthcare 11. Housing affordability 9. Immigration 8. And education is at 7. 53% of voters think mass deportations of undocumented immigrants is a good thing. 47% think it's a bad thing. That has again narrowed up since August. And finally, which party do voters think is going to make Ohio more affordable? 43% say the Republicans, 37% say the Dems, and 19% say neither party. And the sample size here was 850 registered voters. So some good stuff here. This is kind of a red state at this point, although it's not impossible. Democrats could at least be competitive in some of these high-profile races. If Harris was in the White House, I'd think Dems have absolutely no shot here. But with Trump in there, it could be another repeat of 2018 where it's competitive. Could be a lot of spending here. You never know what could happen. This far out, I would have to think the Republicans are going to be favored in the end. But some of the polling leading up to it could show soft support for Republican candidates. There could also be wide swings in some of these polls. The Dems could even lead a few of them. But by the time Election Day finally rolls around next November and everybody's paying attention to the races, it would be a pretty notable upset here if the Republicans did not win both of the top two races here for governor and for Senate. But we're going to follow it. This is just one poll along with the other one for Texas. Take a look at all of them in the aggregate before you make a strong conclusion. But that's it for these polls, so let me know in the comments. What about the Democratic primary in Texas? Who do you think is going to be the nominee? How do you think that's going to affect the general election? And what about in Ohio? Are the Dems seriously going to compete for these races, or is this just soft support for the Republicans? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.